The United States of America, a nation whose boundaries include more than 3 million square miles, with millions of acres and farms that support our basic national industry, agriculture. A nation with thousands of towns and huge cities where industry and commerce are centered, where millions find their daily work, where thousands of factories turn out countless products of the machine age. Factories that also generate vital forces of purchasing power. Today, one of the most important functions of the national government is to take the census of this great nation. For, just as business cannot operate without periodic inventories, so must there be accurate and up-to-date balance sheets of the people, the industries, the social and economic resources of America. And just so does the Census Bureau take stock of the nation. Since 1790, the United States Census has stood as the chief fact-finding agency of the federal government. And today, in the year 1940, the Census Bureau is charged with carrying out the gigantic task of taking three vital national censuses: population, agriculture, housing.
To our enumerators, whoever and wherever they may be, we entrust the performance of this great enterprise. On them, in many ways, depends the success of the 1940 census, for they must collect millions and millions of facts with results that are uniform and complete.
Every person, everywhere, must be listed. And every home must be covered. The nation's housing supply must be described. For millions of farms, acres must be recorded, livestock counted, crops listed. In the early development of America, the census took a vital part, for it was the basis on which popular democratic elections were first held. The actual enumeration shall be made within 3 years after the first meeting of the Congress of the United States, and within every subsequent term of 10 years, in such manner as they shall by law direct. Taking the first census, the 1791, was a relatively simple job. There were less than 4 million Americans, only one schedule to fill out with a few questions about color, sex, and age. Today, in 1940, the census enumeration is more complex than ever. There are more than 130 million Americans, millions of square miles to cover, and many new social and economic problems to be measured by census facts. The questions for the census are derived from thousands of requests for information. The Census Bureau yearly provides vital services to the American public: marketing data for businessmen, population figures for national, state, and local governments, age certification for employment or insurance or pensions. Each question the census uses is carefully studied, and through conferences with representative American business and social groups, each question is sifted down to its final form and content on the basis of national importance. Thus, the Census Bureau functions only as the medium of getting from the American public the most vital and significant facts the American public needs to know. Legislators need census facts from which they may make studies for future law enactment. School boards in every city and county need census population figures to help them chart and plan their school building program. Farmers need the agricultural census to find out about new crops that have become profitable, and census figures help keep agriculture geared to the needs of the populace it feeds. Businessmen use census records of industry, income spread, and population shifts as the index to current conditions, use census records to discover new sales areas for their products.
These are but a few of the hundreds of vital uses made of the census facts. And to get these facts, the Bureau of the Census relies on the cooperation of American citizens and our enumerators. Each enumerator is the federal government's direct agent. He is part of a great temporary army working on one of the most important jobs performed by our government.
Every enumerator is assigned a particular territory to work in, usually one he is familiar with and where he is known. The enumeration districts are grouped together into supervisors' districts which generally correspond to congressional districts. These districts, in turn, are grouped into areas, and the areas finally into 3 main regions that cover the entire country. Through these 3 regions, the census taking is coordinated and reported to Washington. This, then, is the organization of the Census Army as it starts on its job. After careful study of all instructions and of the material he works with, each enumerator works as a part of a carefully planned pattern, so that in all, more than 130 million persons will be enumerated, roughly 33 million homes, 7 million farms. Millions of visits to farms and homes must be made, some easily and quickly, others not so easily.
But I don't know whether I'll answer all these questions of yours. It seems to me that some of them are a little too personal. Nobody's business but mine.
You're right, Mrs. Williams. From your viewpoint, they are personal, but not to the Census Bureau.
What do you mean?
Just this. The Census Bureau asks everybody a lot of questions, but once I put the answers on this schedule, nobody outside the Census Bureau ever sees them.
What about the neighbors?
No, nobody but sworn census employees, and they have no personal interest in such information. To them, it's nothing but a lot of figures for statistical purposes only. No information about any person is ever given out.
Why, a friend of mine told me that you people just went around checking up on a lot of things, like my husband's income, and then told people in Washington what you found out.
Oh, no, Mrs. Williams. None of the information I get from you can be used for any such purpose as taxation or personal investigation. That's the law. All information is confidential.
Well, I still don't see what they need with all those things. Anyway, why should anybody want to know what my husband makes, besides me?
The Census Bureau wants to know how much your husband makes and how much every other husband or wage earner makes, only so there can be accurate totals of the nation's earning power.
That may be important, but I don't have to answer these questions, do I?
Yes. The census is required by the Constitution of the United States. While the first census was taken back in 1790, it was one of the first things that had to be done to organize our government. Facts about you have been recorded in the census every 10 years since you were born, and such facts make it possible for us to preserve our democracy.
Well, when you say that, you make it sound like it's my duty to answer the questions.
It is your duty, and the duty of every person, to give the census all the information needed. And when we've gone over all the questions, I think you'll agree with me. Now, what other persons are there in your household, Mrs. Williams?
Oh, that's easy. There's my husband and my daughter, Ann. She was just 16 last month.
The value of the census absolutely depends on how well each enumerator does his job, as he works quickly but thoroughly. Those are the simple principles that should guide him, that sum up the right approach to his work.
Accuracy, complete coverage, confidential answers.
By keeping these principles in mind and by carefully following and referring to instruction manuals, I am sure our enumerators can make the 1940 census the best one ever taken.
Into the new census building in Washington pour the millions of schedules completed by the enumerators. Here, they are carefully edited and tabulated. Census editors check and code the information on each schedule. Punch card operators transfer the data to small cards. Cards impersonal as the paper they're made of. Ingenious machines translate the holes on these cards, sorting them into groups and then tabulating them by any classifications desired. Census work requires speed and accuracy in every step. Some of these machines can count 60 items of information from 400 cards in 1 minute. When machinery has done its part, the information is then turned over to Census Bureau statisticians who prepare reports, monographs, and create the census volumes that serve thousands of vital everyday needs. And thus, the many individual replies to how many people, how many houses, how many acres, and all other census questions, all these become part of the permanent inventory of the nation, the records of the Census Bureau, a measure of the past, an inventory of the present, a guide for the future.